Pues eso, otro viernes más con el Star Citizen Live, el micro muteado y la cámara. Bueno, pero ahí estamos. Y nada, pues no. El equipo de audio, chavales. Go.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Star Citizen Live Audio Team. Audio What was I going to Audio Team Roundtable. We're off to a good. Don't laugh at me. I'm going to put your faces there, sitting here laughing at me already. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee. And if
I'm
you've
your
never seen
host,
Star
Jared
Citizen
Huckabee.
Live before, it's where we take about an hour out of the end of our week and we put our developers on the spot. Yes, we pull them from their important work and make them answer questions from you, the Star Citizen viewer. On the show this week, esteemed members of our audio team and Phil. So let's go around the table and introduce us. Tell everybody who you are and what you do for Star Citizen. Phil, we'll go ahead and start with you. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm just Phil. I'm the
Phil.
lead sound designer for the audio team.
Lead sound designer. What does a lead sound designer do?
So I'll take the direction from Darren Lambourne, the audio director, and I'll work with the sound designers, the other audio disciplines in the team, like audio code. We've got Graham here, and we've got dialogue. We've got Bob, and we'll just work together to try and make sure we're hitting our milestones and make sure the creative vision, the technical vision, is kind of achieved in game.
Está comentando que es lead designer y que se encarga pues de fijar los objetivos con el resto de equipos y coordinar, ¿no?
Graham Phillipson, I'm lead audio programmer, and it's nice to be at this table again.
Look, I was not hired because I could speak clearly. It's like
Okay. I mean, I certainly wasn't either. So
the hosting parts are the parts that everybody sees, but that's not actually my job. This is the thing that I do on the side stuff. Explain what a programmer how does an audio programmer differ from an audio designer?
So an audio programmer is very much about implementing the vision of the audio designer and attempting to sort of model the real world sound you would expect from certain things, or the fake world sound.
Dice que un programador de audio, a diferencia de un diseñador de audio, lo que hace es tratar de ajustar la visión que quiere el músico, ¿no? Pues a lo que es el juego, tratar de encaje o que suene cuando se espere, ¿no?
And with the greatest hair at CIG. Yeah, I said it, Brian. It's Bob Rizzolo. Bob, who are you? What do you do for Star Citizen?
Oh, you got me competing against Brian. No, that's bad. Yeah, my name is Bob. I'm the lead dialogue dude. Yeah, I mean, I make the words come alive. You know, it's very similar to what Phil said there. It's the narrative. They have the creative vision, and you know, we get the actors in, and we take it from you know, their performance and make it sound beautiful and get it in the game. And you know, especially with dialogue, it's a huge amount of assets and
Este sería el encargado del diálogo, del tendero cabrón que está ahí diciendo just go, que nos piremos y tal. De otras cosas, bueno, que se encarga de pues, basándose en la narrativa y demás y de las fuentes que le dan, pues hacer que suene bien en el juego y demás. El diálogo.
About generalized audio stuff for the Star Citizen persistent universe. We've got a designer, we've got a programmer, we've got a word dude. So as usual, we take questions live during the show. If you're watching on Twitch right now, you can submit your question with the word question in capital letters surrounded by brackets. It's going to help our community management team pull it out from chat and send it on to me. We also put up a thread earlier this week on Spectrum, our bespoke communication platform on robertspacindustries.com, and that let people submit their questions throughout the week and vote up the ones they wanted to see answered most. So as we are usual to do, we are going to start with that thread while the questions from live chat come in. And one of the most voted up questions in the chat, this shows up almost every time we do an audio show, guys. Are we expecting to get something along the lines of red alert in the future, or a battle station's audio to be controllable from the captain's chair? Something to tell everybody else on the ship that stuff's going down.
Si vamos a conseguir algún tipo de alarma, de alerta, tipo alerta roja y demás, que se pueda controlar en las naves.
Definitely to the ship computer voice, the ship computer kind of telling you this, the state's happening. Yeah.
The ship computer voice, or just a
yeah,
red alert.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with getting that situation to really occur and give us enough game data to make that happen. And I think right now, a ship's life is rather binary. You're alive or dead, and there's a lot of plans in there to have a lot of components take damage and failure, and leading to you to have an imminent death, where you have an X amount of time to really have this drama unfold. And in order for us to really gain on that kind of that ship computer, that case, we really need to have that drama to happen for us. But also, especially for a ship-wide announcement like that, we need the bigger side of it is to have, and we've talked about this before too, is that PA system within your ship, so that you can hear these ship-wide announcements from anywhere in the ship. And we're getting closer to that. Actually, we have that tech at its base core working right now, and we're using it in current features that coming out in the next release. So it is something that's happening, but to get it to the point of having it in all of our ships, that's going to take a lot of backlog work and things like that. So plus the tech is also in its early days, so we are getting there. That is a vision, and I do like the idea this kind of question poses, where it's the captain can kind of trigger that use case as well, just to kind of like battle stations. I mean, that's how would you really determine that other than the captain saying that we think.
Dice que en general, bueno, que le gusta mucho la idea de, buenas Elfo, que le gusta mucho la idea de que el capitán pueda activar un tipo de estado o un aviso a bordo de la nave, que le gustaría hacer que eso suceda, ¿no?
Cool.
I'm going to add a point of go ahead, Graham. I'll do mine after.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because everything we do is systemic. So from a tech side, we have a systemic VoIP system where people communicate with each other. We have a tannoy system that, although we haven't marked it up in all the ships, it is proven to be working. And we have a ship-wide audio channel for the VoIP for communication. So it's not a massive leap to then say, let's stick a microphone on the captain's seat and then give you a button you can press, and then you can talk to the tannoy system. It's like, because everything's systemic, there's not a great deal of work involved in doing that from a tech perspective. There is a huge amount of markup required in terms of making sure that the tannoy reaches every extent of the ship and things like that. So it's definitely a great idea. I love the idea. And if you're talking about having a player drive it, a player.
Sí, que le encanta la idea y tal, pero que es mucho curro, que habría que mirar a nivel de programación los sistemas de la nave y que eso suene en toda la nave y tal, y que es mucho curro, pero le gusta la idea, pero que es mucho curro.
A huge amount of design and work to follow up with.
And I do want to follow up when Bob said that some part of it's coming in the next patch. He's not talking about the player implemented part. It's a part that we're using.
Yeah.
That we're not going to tell you about yet. You'll discover it yourself. So just before the summaries go out there and be like, Bob said it's coming next patch. Let's see, what do we got next? I don't remember which show, ISC or QA perhaps, that this was mentioned, but the devs talked about ray tracing being used for proper audio directions. For example, if someone walks to the other side of the wall, you'll hear the sound come from the window or door instead of through the wall. Can you give us an update on this tech?
I certainly can, because I'm currently working on it. So right now, I'm working on some additions to the room system in the game, which are those additions are not specific to audio. They're going to underpin how this audio propagation is going to work, but they're going to be used by other systems too. The AI team's interested in what I'm doing, and there are other systems that would definitely benefit from this thing. But I'm in the process of making it possible to efficiently traverse through our room system. And
Estaban, bueno, Rael, que estaban comentando el tema de utilizar la tecnología Ray Tracing para el sonido, para que rebotase en las paredes y demás. Si tú pues eres una ventana y tal, pues dice, si puede hablarnos del tema, ponernos al día. Dice que sí, que está actualmente trabajando en esto y que está trabajando en el Room System, el sistema bueno, hay que decirlo así, Room System, porque eso más se llama a nivel interno. Y dice que las tecnologías que están explorando para propagación del sonido, que está llamando también la atención o el interés de otros equipos para utilizar en lo que están trabajando para más cosas.
this is one of the biggest things I want to see in the game from my own perspective. So yeah, I'm really pushing hard to get this working.
Love seeing that 1,000-yard development stare when someone says priority shift sometimes in game development. But it is right now, it's my number one priority. Yeah, game development, man. The only constant is change. Let's see, what's next? Let's look for in the chat here. Are there any updates for updating surround sound into the game? Is there a timeline when we can see a standard such as Dolby Atmos be incorporated? Thanks. This is from the director of North America marketing for Dolby Atmos.
Yeah, so spatialization is something we're currently exploring. So looking at enabling spatialization in Wise, which will allow backers to make use of Dolby Atmos, DTS, and window spatialization and stuff. The current version of Wise that we're on doesn't permit that release yet, but when we migrate to the new version of Wise, then it's something we can continue to explore. But it's important to note that when we enable that, it's the Dolby Atmos, DTS and stuff, that's third-party software. So although we can enable the feature, it'll be down to the backers to choose, which versions they want to go with. People might have just, aesthetic preferences, which spatialization tool they want to go with. But beyond that, we still have a keen ear on surround support. It's been a bit challenging with working from home, because we've all been working from home since March last year.
Me está comentando un poquito sobre el sonido surround y cómo va el tema de implementar al juego y demás. Dice que están trabajando en eso y también en otras tecnologías como Dolby Atmos y demás. Y que bueno, que al final, bueno, no es que estén trabajando, sino que cuando terminen de hacer esta parte, pues tendrán que decidir qué tipo de especificaciones de audio o qué tipo de herramientas no se ajustan más al trabajo que quieren hacer. Y también está comentando que desde el trabajo que están haciendo, desde que están trabajando desde casa, pues que ha cambiado un poquito, ¿no? O sea, se ralentizan un poco las cosas. Al final daros cuenta que el audio es bastante importante porque, a diferencia de otros trabajos, esto lo digo yo, ¿no? Pues daros cuenta que ellos tienen que tener un set insonorizado y demás, o pues un equipo adecuado para poder trabajar, y suelen ser equipos gordos en realidad.
Really spearheading, looking into attenuating sound based on the position of the emitter relative to the player. So what head-related transfer function is things sound differently depending on where they are around you. If they're in front of you, behind you, above you, below you, the ear it attenuates the sound slightly differently. And we're looking to, in simplistic ways, try and telegraph that to the player. So when you're in a dogfight, for instance, you can kind of hear the sound changing and you can learn that, hey, that's above me, that's below me, because we're not just dealing with a flat plane like an FPS where things are in front of you or behind you, or slightly above or slightly below. If you're in a 3D space, in a dogfight in space, then everything could be on all axes at the same time. So yeah, we understand it's massively important for a game such as Star Citizen and S42. So it's definitely on our radar and we are looking into it.
You've mentioned the conversion to the new WWise. I feel like we've been talking about that for a while. How's that going?
It's happened more than once, yeah.
Bueno, están comentando del hecho de que en el futuro quieren que el audio represente el posicionamiento tanto no solo en izquierda, derecha, detrás o adelante, sino también arriba o abajo. Si tú estás en... Además, también en el aire como que se ve transformado también el sonido. Quieren reflejar eso y quieren que el jugador tenga, pues, de alguna manera desarrollar la tecnología que permita que el jugador, pues, si está en un dogfight y tiene una nave arriba, pues, o un algo arriba, pues que sepa que está sucediendo arriba o que está subiendo abajo, porque al final en Star Citizen, eh, no el 100% del tiempo, pero la mayoría del tiempo muchas personas van a pasar su juego en un espacio tridimensional, ¿no?
Going to be NPC radio chat in the verse. For example, when we're getting near a station, that our radio captures the chats of other NPC pilots. You know, folks, NPCs calling for landing clearances, stuff like that, that we'll be able to overhear.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've had chats with Dave about this a few times, and I think this might have even come up in previous QAs. But the idea is definitely that we want to have that kind of when you're like a pilot has in a typical aircraft, they get other chatter on an open channel. And that concept is something that we really would like to have for Star Citizen as well. I mean, the main thing that really holds up something like that is just pure content. I mean, to have conversations like that back and forth with many different actors, and enough to make a feature like that very interesting. It takes a lot of recording time, so it's something that's going to take a bit of time to get into, but it is on our roadmap. It is something that we really want to.
Están comentando del tema de que cuando se escuchan las comunicaciones de radio, por ejemplo, gente pidiendo control del aéreo, si puede haber más conversación al mismo tiempo, o si están explorando, pues que se pueda escuchar conversaciones de radio de otros jugadores, ¿no? Cuando estás en una estación, por ejemplo. Y están comentando de que les gustaría hacerlo como en la vida real, en el sentido de que tú, pues, si eres un piloto y estás en la cabina, pues puedes tener un canal abierto donde todo el mundo puede hablar. Y dice que requerirá muchísimo trabajo de grabar escenas de actores y demás, pero que definitivamente que está en el roadmap y que es algo que van a hacer.
Wormholes and that kind of travel is it'd be really cool if we could with permission record the like VoIP or VoIP input of any player and then play that back whilst they're in these like altered states traveling through wormholes. As if it's like warping the reality of time and space. There's many hoops to jump through before even.
Dice que está comentando que sería genial, con permiso, evidentemente, de poder grabar las comunicaciones de jugadores y que, por ejemplo, si vamos a través de un agujero de gusano, que de esa sensación de restos o rastros del pasado y que se escuchen las conversaciones de otros jugadores mientras atraviesas el punto de salto, ¿no?
We'll talk about backlog in a bit. Everything that we ask the game to do requires some amount of resources. You know, it's whether it's audio, visual, effects, gameplay. We're always balancing resources. This question from the live chat is basically: is audio in the live build dependent at all on server performance? Or rather, I guess we'll rephrase it: does server performance affect the quality of audio that players?
La calidad del audio se ve afectada por el rendimiento del servidor.
I could probably take up the rest of this episode.
It's cool because I want to get a drink. So go ahead.
Yeah, cool. Okay. So I'll try to give you the shortest answers possible while Jared gets a drink. So the server performance doesn't directly affect the audio performance on the client. But what it does do is if the servers are running at low frame rate, then that affects how quickly game events happen. And most of what we do as audio tech is hanging off the end of a game event. So if you do get a degradation in server performance, audio being sort of late is a potential knock-on that you can have from that. But in terms of quality of audio and in terms of whether you sort of hear anything like audio dropouts or things like that, that should never happen. The server doesn't have any influence over it.
Dice que lo que puede suceder es que si hay un bajo frame rate en el servidor, que haya ciertos audios que lleguen tarde, pero no debería ocurrir en ningún caso que se pierda la calidad del audio en sí.
Design the engine sounds of a ship of a particular manufacturer.
¿Qué tipo de acercamiento hacéis cuando diseñáis los impulsores, el sonido de los motores de un fabricante en particular?
The brief is about those. Like, are they aligned with military? Are they more aligned with alien tech? You know, are they cheaply made? Are they well made? Then we'll look at the ship specifically. Is it a fighter? You know, a hauler? Is it meant to be focused on mining?
Está diciendo que mirarían lo que es el tipo de nave que es, si es alien, si no, si es barata, si es cara, si es un caza, si es otro tipo de nave.
And see where there's any parity and stuff. And then we'll kind of generate a style guide, and then start generating source, look at references, and then start to implement them and then tune them in game. So we'll get them in Wise.
Empezarían a mirar referencias, se harían un grupo de gente, ¿no? Se empezarían a buscar referencias y irían ajustándolo en el juego.
It's kind of like you're playing like a musical instrument in a way, because we'll implement all these different layers and one shots, but it's actually the ship's movement and input that actually triggers all these. And we have different RTPCs that will attenuate sounds in pitch, in volume, high pass, low pass, and effect, based on the action, the input from the ship. So as a high level, we go, this manufacturer typically does military ships, so everything sounds really robust and aggressive. And this ship is like a fighter, so everything needs to be sleek and fast and not too bulky. And then start tailoring the sounds to that. And that doesn't just specifically mean pertain to thrusters. That could be anything like moving parts, ambiances, you know, any kind of component work and stuff like that. So we want to try and establish like a brand identity for each manufacturer, and then with each category of ship, make sure it sounds appropriate. So you've not got a fighter.
Claro, o sea, que están hablando de que, por ejemplo, si tuviésemos una nave militar, pues le darían un sonido robusto, agresivo. Si fuese un caza, pues algo más fino, pero bueno, pues como un caza, ¿no? y que sí, que se tiene en cuenta pues cierto patrón para una marca, y a partir de ahí pues lo encajan pues si es un caza, si es una nave grande o qué es, ¿no?
With multiple AI, like
Dice además que sería como afinar un instrumento, como tocar un instrumento de alguna manera, que a medida que van sonando, pues a medida que se van produciendo diferentes cambios de aceleración y demás, pues eso se transmite al sonido para que suene diferente, claro.
That kind of question alludes to is Walla, but you know, in general, liveliness kind of comes from having lots of layers. You have a background and a foreground and a middle ground, and or even more than just those, you know, 3 layers for dialogue, and it's a little bit more complicated than you kind of might think. You know, in general, the Walla, as it would sit, you know, is a very static bed of looping bed. And you know, and it doesn't really do much to help sell when the you know, population of a room changes, if it grows or decreases, or you know, if the mood changes, or if the player has an impact on the mood, you know, and pulls out a gun in a crowd and starts firing out, you know, don't do that. But you know, if that were to happen, you know, you know, the crowd would change, you know, and you would want that to kind of to hear that. So it's, you know, it's quite a more impactful system, and you know, we actually have a real goal to really achieve this, and we want to do a dynamic Walla system that actually really accounts for.
Están hablando del Wall Assistant, que viene siendo el bullicio, ¿no? De que se escucha, el murmullo que se escucha cuando hay mucha gente, o para simular que hay mucha gente en un sitio, ¿no? Le preguntan de si tiene 3 capas o es algo más elaborado, y dice que es algo bastante más elaborado de lo que puede parecer en un principio, sino que la idea es que si, por ejemplo, llega un jugador con un arma y empieza a disparar al aire, pues la gente pues o la saca, pues la gente pues reaccione, o sea, la gente, el walla ese, ¿no? El murmullo reacciona y cambie, que sea algo dinámico.
And again, alluding back to what I said before about, you know, conversation trees and like that chatter, that's a lot of content, you know, with a lot of actors, and but mainly, especially that it depends on behavior and you know, acknowledging, you know, those 2 characters acknowledging that they're in a shared conversation, that one person said this topic and now I need to comment on something that makes sense from that topic, and then they want to rebuttal after that, and you want to have like some kind of at least a 3-way back and forth of a conversation, and that takes a lot of effort, and it's a lot more complex than you might think. And then that again is just the foreground, and so then you have the background needing this system, the foreground needing its system, and then well, what do you do, about kind of gluing those two together?
Luego también está hablando de las conversaciones, de los posibles árboles de conversaciones que hay, de cómo una conversación tiene que encajar con otra si activa una conversación entre dos entidades. Y que tiene que haber como tres maneras de salir de una conversación, por lo menos, y que es algo que hay que grabar muchísimo tema de actor, de voz de actor, de voces de actores y tal. Y que es algo que es bastante complejo, que lleva mucho tiempo, ¿no?
Kind of wash away. It's just kind of, it adds like a pepper and some spice to what would be an otherwise static kind of bland bed, and that's what you've seen it in the cargo and refinery decks. You're gonna see it in our new location for Orison. We're trying to achieve a bit more of that, and that's.
Claro, dice que este tipo de entorno que tienen creado con el diálogo y demás, que lo estamos viendo en la refinería, en las estaciones de carga, y que vamos a ver un poco más de esto en Horizon.
It's definitely heavy on our minds right now, because that's like a big thing for us, is feeling that life in a space, even if we don't have the tech or ability yet to do that. We want to try to achieve it in any way that we can.
Claro, dice que el objetivo es tratar de conseguir llenar de vida el verso. Aunque no tengan la tecnología ahora, pues tratarán de hacerlo de la manera que sea posible, tratar de conseguir acercarse lo más posible a esa creación de sensación de vida en el verso.
When the tech's not ready yet, certain areas, like you mentioned in the question, can feel a little bit like they're lacking some life and some color. But what we're looking to do to solve that is not to just artificially throw that life and color in, but it's to throw in a system that allows us to color whatever space it might be. So it's not just about wallets, it's not just even about characters. It might be that, you could walk into a room full of, say, hospital beds, and we could have a system that allows us to recognize that there's a lot of hospital beds in this room, and gives it that kind of calm audio background that a hospital room has, because it's found all these objects in it, and this kind of idea. So we're looking to make a system that.
Claro, dice que están buscando incluso la manera de desarrollar una tecnología que, si nosotros entramos en un hospital, que de alguna manera el sistema de audio reconozca que hay camas de hospital y demás, y adaptar eso, adaptar el bullicio, adaptar todo, que se modifique a ese tipo de situación, ¿no?
That can hit everything all at once, so that we can so that when we keep adding these new locations, these new star systems, these new things, that we don't have to keep doing the same work over and over again. It's just.
Claro, está diciendo de que, pues, con la cantidad de localizaciones que hay que se van a añadir en Star Citizen, tratar de crear un sistema así para no tener que estar haciendo el trabajo una y otra vez, ¿no? Que haya un sistema de alguna manera, pues, vamos a decir, procedural, de que se reconozca ese audio y se adapte el audio al entorno en el que estemos, ¿no?
Big dialogue trees going.
It's hard. We can be as impatient as anybody sometimes. We want.
O sea, la idea es que el audio reconozca de alguna manera los objetos que hay en una zona, ¿no? Por así decirlo.
Sounds for creatures like the space whale yet.
So that's me. We've got early concepts that we're looking at, but we've not really dug into it yet. I think the first.
El audio de criaturas, tenemos conceptos tempranos, pero todavía no estamos en la salsa de verdad.
So that's going to be really interesting, because it'll be a big collaboration between sound design and dialogue design and code, because we're like, we need this to make a sound. Can you build us implementation so we can hook into it? And then speaking with Bob, it's like, what is our baseline for creature sounds? Like, how big are they going to be? Like, what are they going to sound like? And then just starting building some mock-ups and then refining it. So yeah, early days, but nothing concrete yet.
It's also important to acknowledge the behaviors of what these creatures can do, because then you have a mixture of the different kind of, can they eat, can they attack you, can they.
Dice que es importante saber el tipo de comportamientos también que van a tener estas criaturas. Van a poder comer, van a poder dormirse. Necesitan tener esos ser conscientes del tipo de acciones que va a poder hacer una criatura antes de ponerse manos a la obra.
I'm not sure what the oars and whales can do other than looking really pretty. I mean, I'm sure they'll. I don't know. But the as we expand, especially expand on the fauna, that is kind of the biggest thing, is looking at all the different things they can do and kind of making them really feel like a real living creature.
It's a really good point about the behavior, because you almost have to establish a
Claro, dice que a medida que se expanda la fauna, es una de las cosas que van a hacer, ¿no? El estudiar qué tipo de comportamiento tiene la criatura para poder cubrir todo el espectro de sonidos que puede desarrollar.
to attack you. What's that gameplay loop? Or will they make certain attack calls before they kind of come after you or something? Or if it's like a hunting mechanic. I'm not saying there is one, but
Claro, saber, por ejemplo, si una criatura, antes de, por ejemplo, atacarte, o si te va a atacar, ¿no? Que haga algún tipo de sonido antes de atacarte o algo así, ¿no?
As a follow-up question, can you demonstrate for us one of those early concepts you were looking at?
¿Puedes demostrarnos para nosotros
yeah,
algún tipo de
I think Graham's been warming up his vocals for this, haven't you, Graham?
Which one do you want? Do you want space whale or pyro crab?
Space whale.
That's what I've got so far. It's the best. Obviously, if you put a huge amount of reverb on that, it's going to sound.
Lo que acaban de hacer, fuera coña, es un concepto temprano de una ballena espacial. Y fuera bromas, ¿eh?
I'll get that rendered. And
I don't think I didn't hit record. Always the case.
And
Oh,
space crab,
nightmare.
since you offered?
Cangrejo espacial.
Space crabs. No, I can't do that with my vocal cords the way they are after the space whale.
I tried, chat.
Yeah.
All right. Here's an old
Vaya, pero dice que el cangrejo espacial no lo puede hacer con la boca, ¿no?
doing these shows. Is a more rigorous simulation of sound on the table? Doppler effect, sonic booms, sound actually traveling across distances or being delayed, no sound in space. What do you got for us?
Sonic
Oh,
boom.
Yeah, honestly, if you guys just put the sonic boom in, you could just coast the rest of this game. It comes up every show.
It does, and it's tricky. We understand why people want it. So what we've made an active decision to not go along with the speed of sound in the game. That's primarily because as soon as something happens in the game, you want the audio feedback there for gameplay reasons. So as soon as something happens, you want to hear it. And what a sonic boom is if you've got, say, an observer of an aircraft moving faster or at the speed of sound, the sound builds up at the front of the aircraft. So it's basically like a wall of sound that persists. And now, as the observer and the aircraft passes by you perceive that as like a transient boom, but it's just a wall of sound passing your singular location and stuff. So what we do with ships specifically is we have like NPC proxy pass-by loops, which is a kind of in atmosphere specifically is the kind of rippage you normally associate with like jet engines and whatnot. And then we have bespoke flyby sounds that are triggered when certain conditions are met. The ship is moving at a certain speed. It'll vary which flyby sound it plays, and then how close it is to the player. Now, to scratch that itch for sonic booms, we currently have quite heavily designed flyby sound effects that are quite sci-fi. Now, for in-atmospheric flight, what we could do is look to introduce more kind of a typical sonic boom elements in these pass-bys. So there'd be a bigger delineation between a pass-by in space versus a pass-by in an atmosphere. Just to give that kind of that feel of boom, but we don't typically honor the speed of sound because that would be massively expensive to calculate one.
Está comentando de que por razones de gameplay, para que el jugador pueda tener feedback, el sonido no está relacionado con la velocidad del sonido. Y pues cuando ocurre algo, el jugador tiene que tener ese feedback, tiene que ocurrir algo, tiene que pasar. Entonces está diciendo de que, aparte de tener sonido de los motores, también tienen un sonido de cuando se hace una pasada, de flyby, ¿no? Entonces dice que podría trabajarse en la solución de añadir un sonic boom, porque están preguntando sobre los sonic booms, si los van a implementar en el juego de alguna manera, pero no calculado a rebasar la velocidad del sonido, porque eso sería muy caro de calcular, sino que el hecho de que cuando se haga pasada, pues que se haga cierto efecto para que dé esa sensación de Sonic Boom y que así pues se diferencie de alguna manera de lo que es una pasada en el espacio.
The how thick the atmosphere is at different altitudes, it'd be
And then
quite
send it out to 100 different clients.
Yeah, I
so
mean,
at various
it would.
points on the planet.
I mean, it would be quite a large undertaking. There would be two possible approaches. One would be to delay the audio itself, so adding a delay step to the playback of the audio, which would it would be expensive a little bit in terms of CPU, maybe not so much, but it would use a heck of a lot of memory because you'd have to be storing up all your audio and waiting to sort of play it when the time comes that you should play it, and that will be applied across all sounds. So that would be prohibitive. The other option would be to effectively delay any events that affect. I'm being asked during a meeting. Let me just decline. This is the problem with us being at home and doing everything on our PCs.
It's just the kickoff that I've just invited you to for the fleshing out the speed of sound. You know.
Oh, thanks,
There we
Matt.
go.
Yeah, appreciate it. So the other approach would be effectively to delay all the events that affect the audio. So if a weapon fires, you'd kind of store up the fact that it had fired, and then at the point where you want, the delay times, you would then fire it. But again,
Claro, al final la nave al superar la velocidad del sonido, pues tendrían que añadirle alguna especie de delay al sonido y que eso sería, o sea, una de las formas de hacerlo sería pues poner en colas el sonido y que sonase más tarde, pero que eso sería costoso en cuanto a rendimiento se refiere, tanto de memoria como de CPU no tanto, pero de memoria sería una burrada, sería prohibitivo, dice. Y otra cuestión sería pues atrasar el sonido. Sí, bueno, pero a ver, el hecho de atrasar el sonido dice que si nosotros disparamos un arma y tenemos que atrasar el sonido de ese arma, al final que sería sería locura, o sea, para rendimiento.
around and see who it is. And if you have real speed of sound delay, you could be dead before you hear the shot.
Claro, y luego dice que tienes que tener el feedback, efectivamente, de que si tú te están disparando y vas a más a la velocidad del sonido, que con las naves de Star Citizen pasa bastante a menudo, te dispararían y te enterarías mucho más tarde. O sea, para cuando te enteres ya estarías muerto, ¿no?
Would probably be wrong.
Everybody else in the company working to make things more performative and more faster on the audio team here, trying to slow everything down.
Yeah.
Gosh, it has to be a Carrick question. Might there be a system that lets me play music for my crew on the Carrick? Just the Carrick specifically, not all ships, during the long hours in space?
It's a good question. I mean, I think we've skipped over the jukebox question, and if you don't mind, Jarek, I'd like to sort of
do it with the jukebox. It's the same thing as the old subscriber jukebox. Hit it.
Yeah. So we're aware that the jukebox is broken. I think what I wasn't quite so aware of is how popular the idea of resurrecting it is, because it was quite high the list of questions. That same tech could certainly be used for playback of music in any ship. We would have to suggest the idea to design.
Just the Carrick.
Okay, just the Carrick. Okay, yeah, that'd be easier. I mean, it's a flair item, and the jukeboxes, and anyone who knows me knows I'm a big fan of flares. So we'd be able, we should be able to get that working without too much trouble. It's been sort of pushed down the schedules due to priority for quite some time, but I think it does seem that people want it. So, we'll review that certainly next time we come to look at the schedules.
No, le están preguntando de la posibilidad de poner música en la carra, que solo en la carra, a los compañeros y demás. Y dice que bueno, que si le permite ayer revisitar el tema de la jukebox, que es un adorno que podemos meter en el hangar, que está se puede comprar a través del tema de suscriptores o aquellos suscriptores que lo han conseguido. Y dice que se ve que ya ha salido varias veces el tema y que la gente lo quiere y que le gustaría revisar eso para realmente pues que podamos reproducir música al resto de los compañeros en una nave.
To other gamers, then
that's not what this is. Let us be clear.
Yeah,
this
exactly.
is just playing music
client,
locally.
client only your like only for you. You wouldn't be able to stream music, any music to anyone else because then you infringe on copyright and licenses and stuff like that.
Now that was actually the specific wording. Let me play.
Claro. Claro, aquí.
Everything I said, and I'll just say no.
Buah.
Yeah, don't blame us. Blame the RIAA. All right. Let's see. What challenges are there in working on Pyro's audio compared to that of Stanton?
I can take it from like a sound design aesthetic point of view. So Pyro's palette is massively different, like visually to Stanton. So it's a lot more turbulent, and with that going to come unique challenges. Like the planet's going to be different, the moon's going to be different, have a completely different vibe. So if you've got a Stanton palette and you've got a Pyro palette, they're in themselves their own beasts, and then you establish like what does Stanton feel like, what does it embody, what do you want to sound like, and then same with Pyro, and then filter that down, similar to the ship thing, right? You build like a style guide of what you want Pyro to sound like. Do you want to sound dangerous and foreboding, and then how do we filter that down and realize that on this particular planet or this particular planet, and then take in some specifics from each of those.
Bueno, lo que está diciendo es que no podría ser por el tema de copyright y tal, y dice, bueno, pues retiro todo lo dicho. Les acabo de decir que, a ver, esto se lo voy a mandar al support, porque realmente en Amazon sabes que utilizan la plataforma de Amazon Music y yo pues ya os expliqué que la podía poner aquí y podía poner música, y vosotros si tenéis Amazon Music podíais escucharla igual. Entonces eso podría ser una solución, que pusiera un servicio parecido.
Ability to put sounds in and tailor them to the experience is much improved. We have a greater deal of fidelity, but I think the main challenge is really having that feel shift between Stanton and Pyro. So when you're in Pyro, anywhere in Pyro, space traversal or actually on planet, you feel like you're in that system versus Stanton. So hopefully we can achieve that.
I wanted to add too that there's a discipline here that's kind of missing some representation. Music, well, I think will have a really big impact on selling the emotional aspect of where we're being from either Stanton or Pyro. And that's I think a very critical element when feeling out a different space. So in a lot of cases, it's meant to not be very obvious either, the way music affects you in that kind of sense. So, but
for sure, yeah.
Have you heard anything from Pedro on Pyro yet?
No, we're not engaging music on Pyro yet because we've got other priorities, shifting priorities. Jared. But that'll be a big undertaking because Stanton's been all consuming, right, for the project, and Pyro is a huge shift, working on a completely new system, and it's going to be a lot of fun working with Pedro, fleshing out the music for that.
I was gonna say he usually sends me the early stuff first, to get my opinion on it. He hasn't sent me anything.
Qué perro el Discolando. Está hablando de Pedro Maceo Camacho, que sabéis que es el creador de la música. Que si tienen algún audio preparado ya para Pyro, por Pedro y tal, y dice que no, que de momento no tal, que va a ser, que cuando empiecen a trabajar en ello, que va a ser muy, muy entretenido, que están deseando trabajar en ello. Y dice Discolando que a él le suele enviar los audios ahí en plan antes y tal, interesante.
It's a joke of the sound designer from Star Wars, Ben Burt, was putting it in, and then it was an in-joke of him putting it in a lot of films, and it being just recognizable. But it's a lot of people do it, but if you're aware of it, you'll be in the experience, watching the film or playing the game and stuff, and as soon as you hear it, you're just taken out of the experience. Immersion's kind of broken because you hear this sound effect that's been, or this dialogue asset that's been in so many other things. So I don't think it would find a place in either of the projects. But dialogue, it's Bob's domain. Maybe he really wants it, and we can duke it out.
We're waiting for the.
Gotta give him hope, Phil.
We're waiting for the Huckabee screen to be delivered, that we can use that instead.
For a second, I considered doing it, and I'm not going to do it. Pause there. I'm like, Being a gas giant, and as such, unlike any other planetary body in the PU, is Crusader getting particularly different sounds? Like,
¿Está el gigante gaseoso de Crusader adquiriendo sonidos particulares para Crusader? Supongo que sí.
So, looking at Crusader and Horizon, the landing location like Sky City, we've obviously been syncing with art really, really closely. And wind is going to be a big like hero character of that location. So yeah, we have wind and weather and stuff in other locations, but we'll be spending particular attention on crafting the wind and the ambience of that location to make it sound good. Wind is essentially just shaped broadband noise, so it's going to be slightly challenging. But there's the actual landing location itself to tie into, and that's going to have a lot of opportunities to have nice audio tidbits. But regards to the Crusader, the planet, with it being a gas giant, I think one thing we can really play with is the idea of pressure. Now, we don't want audio to be driving gameplay decisions and features and stuff. But what I'd like to explore is the idea of pressure on the ship and then the audio feedback you would get regards to atmospheric pressure, because you'll never be able to get to.
Dice que una idea de las que quiere explorar en Crusader, aparte de que tiene una entera banda sonora prácticamente para lo que es el sonido de los vientos y demás, el hecho de que quiere explorar la posibilidad de utilizar la presión o la sensación que da de tener esa presión alrededor de la nave para modificar, o sea, para que se escuche, para tener ese feedback de audio, ¿no? De esa presión.
The ship and whatnot.
I'm hoping we'll see some contrast to the inside and outside too, right, Phil? I mean, you have to think about the outside being so windy, but then the inside being nice and calm and serene.
Claro, dice también la idea de haber un contraste entre el exterior y el interior, de que fuera ser pues todo lleno de viento y tal, y dentro pues ser más calmado. Los interiores.
Yeah, and with Horizon specifically, it's making sure that the different districts, the different areas have their own kind of feel as well. They're all in the.
Claro, dice que con Horizon pues estar claros de que o sea, conseguir que cada zona, cada área pues tenga su propia personalidad en ese sentido del audio.
Differently, if there's a more business functional area, then it's making sure that everything just sounds functional. They're not trying to make the external traversal pleasing, whereas like the communal area, like where the shops are and stuff like that, making sure that it's they're protecting their the people on foot.
Got a follow-up question to our space crab and space whale question here. How will you create the sounds of the creatures in the verse? Will you just modify the sound of Earth animals, or do you create them from zero?
Taking all our secrets.
Yeah. I don't know. Bob, do you want to talk about some dialogue design stuff, or I can approach it from some sound effects stuff?
I mean, the idea behind it, in general, though, is finding like sounds, and you can take a real Earth animal, or even use your human voice to create a base of something, and then having like sounds and processes and working with that to create something new is kind of the key there. I mean, but you don't have to start with a real animal source to get a real feeling of a being. It's just it's a matter of how that sound interacts, or how you can play with that sound to make it sound like a living being. So and that's what's really special about sound design or creature design in general. So it can really come from any kind of source and whatnot.
Claro, está diciendo que el sonido de una criatura se trata de pues trabajar ese sonido para tratar de dar alguna sensación, pues eso, de que viene una criatura, pero la inspiración puede venir de muchos lugares.
Yeah, you can do a lot. So one technique that's used is dinosaurs, kind of birds and stuff. You slow them right down. So if you record at a high enough sample rate, so you record at 192 kilohertz, you can really slow that down, and you don't lose fidelity of the information. So you can take like a tweet from a bird and pitch it right down to make it sound like a behemoth, kind of like Stegosaurus or something. But what's on the market now is
Claro, lo que dice que una de la...
what the human ear.
Claro, dice que en el caso de nosotros podemos grabar un pájaro, dice, y ralentizar ese sonido y transformarlo de alguna manera en el sonido de un dinosaurio y tal. Y que dice que también ahora mismo en el mercado hay micrófonos que son capaces de grabar audio que se sale del registro del oído humano y con eso también pueden trabajar.
And then you pitch all that stuff down. You're moving stuff down that is unperceivable to the human ear into the audible range, and it's also at a high fidelity because of the sample rate. So you could take a bird recording, a walrus, a horse, and you could pitch it down. You hear all this hidden content that is out there in the world, but you just can't perceive it. So you can draw upon that for sure. And then the other thing we can do for like creature design is use plugins that can morph sounds together.
Está diciendo de que efectivamente con esta clase de micrófonos puedes, por ejemplo, grabar un caballo, grabar un pájaro y sacar a luz esos sonidos que siempre están escondidos y trabajar con eso. Y también pues utilizar un software que le llama para morph, o sea, para juntar como audios y demás, o modificar audios, ¿no?
Like making the kind of like vowel sounds, like sounds of like the vocal tract. There's loads of formant filters out there that you can make things sound like ooh, ah, ee, ah, ooh. You know, that really grounds sounds in some kind of creature because it's all relatable, right? All these vowel formants that we all make, and that's a trick that we do for wind. If you want wind to sound creepy or ominous, you'd put an element through a formant filter. So as you walk past a door, it's like, ooh, you go, that's creepy. And then not going in there. No, thank you. But yeah, so there's loads of techniques we can do, and it's going to be, creature design is really fun. And you'll come up with some absolutely ridiculous results, and that's part of the fun. So yeah, looking forward to that.
If there's not a ship in the verse named Dolphin Chainsaw within the next 10 minutes, I'm going to be disappointed. Also,
epic.
Bird.
Bueno, ya habéis escuchado que también pueden hacer sonidos con la voz y luego modificadores de voz para jugar, ¿no? Habéis escuchado ahí.
Create a thread that says that Phil confirmed Dolphin Chainsaw for Star Citizen today.
Absolutely.
Just so I can get the email from Chris.
It's the parasite docking creature for the space whale. That's what it is.
Any audio Easter eggs you can tell us about?
Yeah, unfortunately, we're a little light on that. I'd love to put more in.
Stupid focusing on real work.
Yeah, so with the shifting priorities, Jared, it's quite hard sometimes to. Basically, we're focusing on getting the work for releases done, focus on getting squadron work done and stuff. There was an Easter egg in ages ago. There was the Grey Cat buggy that you can drive around the hangars and stuff, right. And as a laugh, we replaced the horn with like a foghorn. So rather than a beep beep, it was like horn. But that was years ago now. But yeah, no, I'm all up for Easter eggs. So when we start getting around.
Me está preguntando si hay alguna sorpresa que nos podamos encontrar con el audio. Dice que años atrás en el Greycat le habían puesto que si lo movías en hangares el Greycat que hiciera un sonido de un coche antiguo y tal, pero que no han puesto nada al respecto por ahora.
Graham. VoIP.
Yes.
That's it. That's just the question. VoIP.
Okay, I have the question in front of me.
VoIP is less than perfectly reliable in my experience for party chat, and even in my own home, the 3 Star Citizen players use Discord instead. When can we expect a bit of love for this important subsystem? I'd like to discover that can other people hear me, and am I not hearing other people quickly and easily for now at least?
So the good news is that when you can expect a bit of love for this important subsystem is in the quarter that just ended, because we've been working on it all the way through since the beginning of the year, trying to improve all the stability.
Están preguntándolo sobre el VoIP.
Issues that we've had, and all that is now going to be in the next release. All that work is already submitted. Obviously, we have to wait until that build goes out to know just how much we've achieved. But I am very confident that you're going to find that the VoIP stability is way better than it ever was. We are aiming, if we find any more issues, we'll be jumping straight on them because we are.
Está comentando de que la estabilidad del VoIP ha sido mejorada y que la siguiente liberación pues será más mejorada todavía. Y al final, pues, hombre, pues con cada parche que van sacando ese tipo de cosas van a mejorar, claro.
And we would love to hear your feedback.
Send your letters to Graham Phillipson, care of Cloud Imperium Games UK, Winslow. I don't actually understand how UK addresses work. I was going to make an address up. Your addresses are so different than the US addresses. I'm just.
At least we've got our dates the right way around, though.
I actually do prefer the European way of writing dates. So
you mean the correct way?
Yeah. I also like metric systems, so go.
Go figure. No. To me, the only correct way is year, month, day, because that makes
to be fair. Since I seconded and worked on dialogue with you, Bob, like all of my files, all of my archives, they do the year first, then the month, then the day.
Oh, is that not what we're talking about? I do year, month, date. Is that not what we're talking about?
Oh, well, because obviously we have studios here in the UK, we have studios in the US and stuff, but sometimes you get a date which is the day and the month are interchangeable. I think what I see from the US, they put the month first, then the day, then the year, and over here it's always day, month, year.
Oh, you do day
I got first 2 digits of the year,
no.
then the day, then the month, and then the last 2 digits of the year.
All 4 digits of the year, then 2 digits of the month, 2 digits of the day. That's the way to do it.
When you're deving and working, that's really useful. But if you wrote the date like that in the general societal world, you might confuse people.
That's why I'm still single. All right. I bet chat loved that diversion. Cyberpunk introduced completely new bands to fit in this kind of genre, like Samurai. I already know that there's a metal band called Clover in Star Citizen. Will we ever hear official tracks from the fictional bands in Star Citizen in the persistent universe?
So with this, I think it would come down to syncing with narrative and with Bob, because if they're writing lyrics, presumably they have to be in lore, right, and appropriate. But what is challenging on the music side, because we have composers, we have Pedro on the PU and we have Jeff on S42, and we do compose some music internally. It's really trying to establish what music would sound like in lore, like in the verse, that far in the future. Like if you were to put some AC/DC kind of rock in the game, it would be out of place. So if we do start to flesh out more like diegetic music, which is music from in the world, it's always going to have this sci-fi take on it, and make sure it sits well in the setting. But yeah, I'll defer to Bob about how you'd engage with narrative and kind of kick off that process.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because I know of a little bit that we've done, but that's for Squadron, so I can't talk about that. It's a great idea. It's a great concept, and it's something that I know narrative are very interested in, because they already have named these names of these bands, and I mean they put them in there so that we can have things to talk about in these conversations that I've alluded to earlier. These trees, we want to have things to talk about the universe, and a lot of times they talk about music or like their favorite this or that or whatever, like food places to go or brands or things like that. So that we're
Claro, están hablando un poco le han hecho la pregunta de qué pasaría, porque en Cyberpunk han metido bandas del mundo real al videojuego, si vamos a ver grupos de música reales, de la vida real en el videojuego. Entonces dicen que bueno, que en realidad en Star Citizen componen todo a nivel interno y que quieren pues averiguar de alguna manera cómo sonaría la música en el futuro. Y el tema de que está comentando ahora el diseñador de audio que le encantaría el poder tener grupos de música en en el juego, que sean parte del lore al menos, para poder establecer las conversaciones que van a tener los NPCs, pues que los NPCs pues, tendrían que hablar de comida, tendrían que hablar de la música del momento, o tener conversaciones de ese tipo.
In the narrative team to start coming up with bands so that you just created yourself a whole bunch of work.
Más que dicen que qué pasaría si una música de AC/DC sonase en el futuro. Yo creo que sí que debería de estar. O sea, hay música que no caduca, ¿no? O sea, hay música clásica que lleva escuchándose cuánto tiempo. Al final vamos a seguir con esto y ahora comentamos eso.
Tell us.
Yeah, so on the back of an explosion, there are several different variants of debris triggered if you're in close proximity to the explosion. And VFX are working on more physicalized particles hitting your ship. So we'll be putting sound to those.
Cool. The sound of quantum travel when a ship is arriving at your location sounds odd and unrealistic. Any plans to...
En el tema de las explosiones, que hay diferentes tipos de sonidos según estás cerca o no, y que el equipo de efectos especiales va a trabajar también en partículas que exploten y también ponerle sonido a esas partículas.
Since our first pass of it. So we do try and tackle these things in tech debt. So
en el tema del quantum travel, del sonido, están trabajando en el sonido del quantum travel.
What's the tonk sound like?
epic.
Tonk tonk.
Let's see. Voice commands for communicating with the ship, like our own version of voice.
Si hay la posibilidad de nuestra propia versión de Voice Commander para poder hablar con la nave.
No,
It's
no,
in
go
the
ahead.
backlog. It's in the backlog and consistently 2 years out from being started work on.
Geez, yeah. I mean, I will say that it is I mean, as a player myself, that is like one of my biggest dreams, to be able to walk around and speak into like the VoIP, speak into the mic and have an NPC acknowledge me and actually.
Claro, dice que como jugador uno de sus sueños es estar hablando a través de la cámara o del VoIP y demás y hablar con un NPC y decirle que haga algo funcional, ¿no? Que es algo que sería increíble para...
Everyone I've talked to, we all feel the same way about it. It's a huge thing. So, you know.
Pero que es una cosa muy bestia, ¿no? Es algo muy vasto hacer eso.
Yeah, I mean that's moving along. We're setting up some research in this quarter even to kind of push forward on it. But you know, roadmap priorities. But it is definitely something that we see as a
El que se lea el texto en voz, que si están trabajando en eso o hay alguna cosa de esas, sí, que hay otras prioridades en el roadmap, pero que es algo que están pensando.
Lastly, what does the Hercules sound like?
¿Cómo suena el Hércules?
Epic.
Epic. Qué grande.
No, that sounds great. We've actually spent a long time going through not only the thrusters and all the cool stuff, but the interior ambiences, because it's a huge ship and there's so much interdependence between what the ship is doing and the audio feedback you get from like components, words and whines and ambiences and stuff like that. So it's going to sound really fitting for the size of it, and it's one of the largest ships we worked on for a little while. So we hope that you're going to be happy with it.
Cool. That's it. That's our show. Everybody, thank you so much for being here on the show with us this week. We are going to throw the what is it called? It's called a raid 2. Who are we raiding, Tyler? Meyer. All right. We're raiding Meyer. He's got a nice hat. No, Meyer's cool. Meyer is a longtime volunteer. Anytime we got events in the EU, Meyer is always there helping out. So throw the raid over to Meyer, say hi, ask him where he got his hat. For Star Citizen Live, I'm Jared, that's Bob, that's Phil, that's Graham. We'll see you next week, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Meyer?
I suppose get...
Le están haciendo la raid. Pues comentando un poco el tema, lo que decía antes, que yo creo que el hecho de que pretendan hacer música de cómo sonaría en el año 900 y pico. Es decir, me parece algo demasiado complejo para tratar de hacer. O sea, vamos a ver, la creación de arte en general, al final es algo que va evolucionando con los años y que sale de... O sea, no cualquiera marca modas en nuestro planeta, ni hace... O sea, y cada generación, pues eso va cambiando y modificándose, ¿no? El tratar de quizás anclarse al hecho de que encaje tanto en la narrativa y que sea algo así de cara con visión de futuro, creo que, o sea, yo creo que en eso, quizás si lo quieren plantear así, yo creo que desde mi punto de vista se equivocan, ¿no? O sea, yo creo que deberían de... O sea, que está bien que haya la música que tenemos hoy en día o grupos de música que tenemos hoy en día, pero que al mismo tiempo conviva con música que supuestamente podría haber o temas que se hagan basados en el lore o demás historias, pero al final, eh, a día de hoy, conviven la música del pasado con la música del presente, ¿no? Eso es así.